I don't copy anybody else's ammunition. I don't do that. Hello, Underwood. I come up with a better mousetrap through knowledge and innovation. I have never copied anybody's ammo. Hi folks, Tim Sundles here, and Kim is filming on my iPhone because we did the 416's part 1 on her iPhone, which is now uploading into Google so that we can then put it on all of our social media sites. So my phone is the one that's available. In part 1, we talked about the 404 Jeffrey and different bullet designs and original ballistics versus modern ballistics. And then we got into the 416 Rigby and talked a lot about it. So, and I, showed all the rifles. So in part 2, we're going to cover, and we covered the 416 348. So in part 2, we're going to cover the 416 Remington and the 416 Ruger. So everybody says that the cartridge to use for all around everything in Africa is one of the various 375s. And having done a bunch of that, I disagree. The various 416s cover more ground than the various 375s. And I talked about the 416 Rigby and some of the buffalo bore loads in it and how much I've used them in Africa. Well, the 416 Remington is a case that holds quite a bit less powder, like 30 grains less powder than the 416 Rigby. However, due to if you want to load it at higher pressures, which I see nothing wrong with. Everybody gets going on about the 416 Remington operates at higher pressures than the Rigby. That makes the Rigby better. No, it doesn't. Makes the Rigby different. Doesn't make it better. These guns, the brass, the world we live in, has no problem with the operating pressures of the 416 Remington. I mean, all things being equal, which they aren't, sure, I like low pressure. High pressure is your enemy. But the pressure of the 416 Remington is such, that it's not your enemy. So Buffalo Bore makes a 400 grain soft, that's a 400 grain TSX, and a 350 grain TSX. The 400 grain TSX runs 2,400 feet a second. The 350 runs 2,600 feet a second. Same as the 416 Rigby Buffalo Bore. It just operates at higher pressure because there's a lot less powder capacity there. It's highly usable. And there's a couple of smaller makes, wildcats of 416s I'm not going to talk about here, like the 416 Taylor, the 416 Hoffman. They're kind of similar to the 416 Remington. They just were never commercialized. So let's go to the 416 Remington. This is I always forget their name. It's a Waffen Jung rifle. Now this is an old one that I bought used. Not very used. Most people buy these things and really never use them. They're safe queens. This rifle is as good as they get. I mean, for a magazine rifle, Waffen Jung, Hartmann and Weiss, they just don't get any better. And of course, I have to test everything we make and test it extensively. So I'm not just a glutton for guns. Well, I am a glutton for guns, okay? But that's not why I own this many different 416s. I don't copy anybody else's ammunition. I don't do that. Hello, Underwood. I come up with a better mousetrap through knowledge and innovation. I have never copied anybody's ammo. The closest I come to copying ammo is looking in loading manuals to get baseline ideas on pressures, powder choices, velocities, bullet weights, and then from there, with knowledge and with ability, I design superior cartridges.
And testing.
Well, hence all the guns. And I've got 416 Rigby's and 416 Remingtons that aren't up here because, well, when my wife and I had this table made, we obviously made it too small. So, again, Magnum Mauser action, a wonderful rifle. I can't say enough about how good these Waffen Jungs are, and they're known for that. And if you want to have one made, you'll pay 4 times what I bought this used one for, and you'll wait 3 or 4 years to get it. So when it comes to really like high dollar rifles, I don't have that kind of money. I look around on Guns International till I find good used ones. Now, here's a rifle that has no peer, even though it's not a Waffen Jung or a Hartmann and Weiss. There was a small gun maker in London. It was a husband-wife team, and they had one partner, and they only lasted really one generation. Medwell and Parrot, or would you pronounce it Medwell and Parrot? I'm not sure exactly how you'd pronounce it. I've only seen 2 of these. One is a 416 Rigby that's not a Mannlicher stock, nor is it a takedown like this one is. I stole this rifle without the scope for $10,000. And I cannot tell you what a theft that was. To have this rifle made in takedown and the level of quality work on this thing, you would pay today. I asked Dwayne Wiebe, who's one of our very premier rifle makers that makes dangerous game calibers, he and Smithson, J.P. Smithson. I asked Wiebe, and I showed him the rifle, and I said, what would you charge to make this? And he looked it over and over. He makes his own stocks. He does his own checkering. He is an artist, and we don't appreciate him today the way we should. When this guy dies, his rifles will skyrocket in value. He's made me 4 rifles. I said I gave, and I think it was like $9,800. I said, that's what I paid for this. He looked at it and he goes, well, if you could buy 100 of them for that price, buy them. He said, I couldn't make this for any less than $50,000, being handmade. Everything's handmade, including their own Mauser action. This was a Medwell and Parrot action. They didn't take, FN's Mauser or Mauser's Mauser or anything else. They made their own. And I can attest to what a wonderful working machine this is. I've shot it a lot. I haven't taken it out and hunted with it because I'm just stuck using the one 416 Rigby I hunt so much with. I am going to show you a 416 Remington I've had to Africa a few times, killed a lot of stuff with too. But this is a 416 Remington. What a rifle. Wow. I consider myself fortunate to own a piece of workmanship like that. Just unbelievable workmanship. This, I can't remember the maker's name. This is a pre-64 Model 70 action. And some maker, and it's not even on the gun. That's what blows me away. Everything else is on the gun, but the maker's name, and I used to know who it was. They were out of Washington State, I believe the Spokane area up where the Bisons operated.
So throw your ideas out there, folks, if you have.
Who made it? If I was told the name, I'd recognize it. I just have forgotten over decade or so that I've owned this rifle. Okay, I've had this one to Africa a few times. I've killed Cape buffalo with it, numerous head of plains game. This rifle is one of the rare rifles that shoots every load I've ever tried very well. Most of these rifles will have a favorite load or favorite loads. They won't shoot everything the same. Not only does this rifle shoot all the different loads to the same point of impact, it shoots them into tiny little groups at 150 yards. And I don't know, you just get lucky when you find one of those. This is a keeper. This one is never going anywhere. This is a 416 Remington I can pick up and use, and it works and works and works, and I have very little money into it. I mean, I've got almost as much money into the scope as I have into the rifle. This was very affordable. I found it originally on Guns International and bought it from Kirby Hoyt. I like Kirby. If you guys buy something from Kirby, Kirby's an honest man. I will not say that about all the advertisers on Guns International. Okay, this rifle I bought used from Jason Vincent, who originally planned to take it to Africa and leave it there. And this is a Penrod rifle. I'm trying to think of the guy's first name, Mark Penrod. And I'm trying to think of the name of the stock that's on it because that's a really famous maker. Anyway, this is a Usen rifle in 416 Remington. And I'm going to take it to Africa on our next trip early next year. And I'm going to leave it there and there's a legal process of paperwork you got to go through to do that. But I'm going to leave it there for our friend and ranch manager, Chris Yonker. I bought this with Chris in mind. And in a rifle of this quality, built on a pre-64 Winchester action, you just can't get that kind of stuff in Africa. And I want Chris to have this 416. He shoots a 416 Rigby in a CZ 550, carries it a lot for dangerous game. And this will give him a 416 Remington option in a super high quality rifle. And by the way, I'm not knocking the CZ 550s. They work. They're probably the best rifle for the dollar. They work and they work and they work and they work. Tons of professional hunters in Africa use them because they're reliable and they're affordable. I have no idea why CZ shot themselves in the foot and shot hunters in the foot by discontinuing the Model 550. Makes absolutely no sense to me. And of course, now they've more than doubled in price in the 5 years since CZ quit making them. This, and I think I pointed it out, this is a pre-64 Winchester here. It's just very nicely executed. And Chris Yonker will be able to use this for a lifetime. He's young, so I like getting guns for a kid like that that's really into guns. Can't find this kind of stuff in Africa, and he'll get 40, 50 years of use out of it, and I like that. That's just like a good horse going to a good cowboy who's going to use it year round for years and years. It gets used. Now, this 416 Remington is one of my Alaska just kind of beat around rifles. I've shot brown bear with it, backing up another hunter, because the bear was getting away. I've shot black bears with it. I don't even remember who built this one. This one was built to my specifications with a 20-inch barrel. I built it just for taking to Alaska. I keep a 2.5 to 8 loophole on it with, the quick disconnect mounts. And then this iron flip-up sight is sighted in so that if I need to take the scope off for any reason, or if I damage the scope, the rifle is still usable, although that is a very short sight radius. But for 25 yards or, even 100 yards, that's plenty of sight radius to get the job done. All stainless Winchester controlled round feed action. The knurling on the bolt knob with all the recoil in this lightweight rifle was just peeling my trigger finger knuckle right down to the bone. So I just took a Dremel tool to it. That's Sundles gunsmithing. Made it flat and smooth on that side. You know, who the hell puts knurling on these bolt knobs on 416s and 458s? Winchester? Winchester does it. Well, that's because their own people never go out in the field and shoot the guns. That knurling on that bolt knob just takes the skin right off your knuckle. And after 5 or 6 shots in the same day, or 10 shots in the same day, you know, if you don't have a Band-Aid on there, you're right down to the bone. Design engineers, this should be a law, and I'm not for new laws. I hate all the stupid laws we have. Design engineers of anything should be required to be end users of it for a year before it's put on the market. It'd save us all a lot of trouble.
Probably be more than half that would go out of business.
yeah, they'd have to make stuff right.
Maybe 90%.
Yeah, imagine that. No, we got to make it right. Never mind, it costs too much to do it right. Okay, the 416 Ruger, which has many, many benefits. Believe it or not, it holds only, it looks a lot smaller, it's not. It holds only 2 grains less powder than the 416 Remington. That's because it has very little body taper. It doesn't have a belt on the base. And so the body diameter is all case and case capacity instead of the belt being down there making your body diameter. And then, of course, it's shorter for a standard length action. You can put those right in an 0.6 length, 270 Winchester length action. That's the beauty of them. And in a 20-inch barrel, I can push that bullet. That's a 350 grain TSX, same as this bullet. This is a 400 grain TSX. I can push it at 2,600 feet a second in a 22-inch barrel. And I believe Buffalo Bore makes both the solids and the TSX in 350 and 400 grain loads for it. I know I've got to get out to the factory later today and test fire some 400 grain solids. We're out and our shipment of CEB 400 grain solids came in, and so I've got to get out and test fire them when I finish this video. So my one and only current 416 Ruger. This is the Ruger guide gun. And, you know, without the scope, when I bought this, I think it was under $1,000. Now, if Ruger had contacted me and said, Tim, we want you to design a gun just for guides and just for the rough, harsh conditions of Alaska, this is what I would have made. You can put different layers in the butt pad to increase your length of pull. It comes with good quick detachable scope rings, and the bases on it are integral. You don't add bases, they're built on it. It's control round feed with a 3-position safety that locks the bolt handle down when it's on safe. And then you've got the middle position for loading and unloading if you want, where the gun can't fire in the middle position. And it's not so much of a wing safety like the Winchester. It's a little more ergonomic for me. It's got backup iron sights, and something I never use, it has a muzzle brake. But I've left it on there so that anybody, if I go to Alaska, any woman, any child can pick this up and fire it without, eating the scope for lunch. Kim's got a big scar on her forehead from getting bit by a scope. And so she's very careful about that these days. It's got the sling swivel stud up here on the barrel. So under recoil, it's not digging into your hand. In a 20-inch barrel, all stainless construction, a laminate wood stock. They're just as inert as concrete. They're nice, good, heavy-duty stocks. That's how you design something you call a guide gun. And I've given Ruger a lot of crap for some of the stuff they produce in their revolvers. Usually has to do with shitty sighting systems that don't work. I will say that Ruger has a winner here. Kim used a rifle like this to kill her Alaska brown bear, only hers was chambered in .375. Yeah, there's her brown bear, smiling at her.
That's another story.
Yeah.
That's not really my bear. They really screwed it up. It didn't look anything like that, but we'll tell you that story
Another
about taxidermists and outfitters and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
More to come.
It's actually the right hide. When they tanned it, they accidentally bleached it, completely changed the color, which was a shame because Kim shot it for the color. In part, I mean, it was a nice big mature boar, but it was the color that won her heart and thus got the bear dead. Anyway, that's the way to make a guide's rifle, a dangerous game rifle. Now, if I was to want to hunt with this, I would want a 22-inch barrel because the 20-inch barrel does rob a little velocity. And if you're a nut like me and you want the gun to be as versatile as possible, I'd go with, if I wanted to hunt with it, I'd go 22 inches. Not that you can't hunt with this, you can. It's fine out to 300 yards, just fine. But if I'm gonna go to Alaskan hunt brown bear, I want the 400-yard capability, which every professional guide up there cringes when they hear me say something like that until they get to know me. You know, at 400 yards, I can kill a brown bear with no trouble. Most people, you know, you're just begging for a wounded bear or a miss. So they don't allow that. They like to get you within 100 yards if they can, which I actually agree with. I want the versatility.
Well, and something I didn't know until I actually had my hunt. In Alaska, you pay ahead regardless whether you shoot something or not, which means if you see something you want and you're someone like Tim and it's 390 yards away and it's a world-class bear, you're not going to let it slip away. And so he wants that capability because you're going to pay or lose that money regardless of whether you walk away with the bear or not, which you've done many times.
Yeah, true enough. Ruger does make I believe they call it the All-American. It's essentially this rifle. I don't know if it's the laminated stock, but same action, same barrel, but 22 inches instead of 20. And were I going to hunt with the 416 Ruger, that's the Ruger I'd be using. And I'll tell you what else about Ruger. These Ruger M77 controlled round feed actions, the freaking things are just indestructible. You can throw them in the water. You can leave it out overnight accidentally in the snow. I've done that. You can do all kinds of things wrong with these things, and they just keep working and keep working and keep working. And I was talking to Phil Shoemaker one day, and I said, so what rifle, due to its versatility, durability, reliability, do you like most of the time when your clients show up to hunt a big brown bear? And he goes, you really can't beat that Ruger controlled round feed M77. He said they're kind of clunky and not elegant, but they just work and work and work and always work. And in my experience, I have to agree with Phil on that. They just seem to always work. So, you know, $1,000 plus the scope. Now they're probably, I've had this one 6 or 7 years. Now they're probably more like, you know, $1,500 or $1,600 with inflation doing what it's done. They're worth every penny of it. I was offered for Kim's rifle when we were in Alaska brown bear hunting. One of the guides at base camp, he took another hunter, but he saw the rifle and he knew it was a Ruger guide gun. He offered me $2,000 for it without the scope on it, and I paid just under $1,000 for both of those 375s as well as this 416. And I just said, dude, if you offered me $5,000, I wouldn't sell it, because these guns just work, and they're a harsh condition rifle. You scratch them up, you drop them, whatever. You don't cry crocodile tears over it. I would not. I just would not sell one of those rifles, because we're still in the using phase of our lives. You know, when I get too old to walk, okay, they're all going to be for sale. Most of them will probably be given away to people that really appreciate them. Folks, that is my story on the 416s. I think worldwide it's the most versatile cartridge there is. Most people are going to disagree and say the 375 H&H is, and that's fine. I've killed a lot of game with both. I really prefer the 416s, especially if we start whacking buffalo and you get a less than perfect shot. I mean, if you get a perfect shot, you can kill Cape buffalo with a 300 Win Mag. So if your buffalo happens to charge or something like that, I just much prefer having a 416 in my hands than a 375. Been there, done that a few times. And the 416s, when they're loaded right, with 350 grain tip triple shocks, 300-yard shots aren't a problem. Up close shots at 10 yards on a Cape buffalo aren't a problem. It's just versatile, versatile, versatile. And you can switch right over to that 350 or 400 grain CEB solid and put it right through an elephant's brain. So it's the 416's just as versatile and useful as they get. I'll leave you with that and hope that this, this little piece on the 416s is as interesting and useful as it is to me. Kim and I leave you with our blessings, and God bless.